What happens when a flight attendant judges a first-class passenger based on assumptions? How far can one person's prejudice go before it leads to a downfall? A calm woman, seemingly ordinary, faces discrimination mid-flight, but she doesn't raise her voice. Can silence be more powerful than confrontation? Watch to see how one quiet moment changes everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more. Los Angeles International Airport LAX was alive with its usual frenetic energy, a sea of travelers rushing to their gates, their footsteps echoing against the polished tile floors. The overhead announcements blended with the chatter of people, all hurrying to meet tight deadlines, make connections, or catch that next flight. The terminal was a hub of activity, yet amidst the chaos, Monica Blackwell moved through the crowd with an unhurried grace that made her presence unmistakable. She walked confidently, her every step purposeful, her expression calm and collected. Dressed in a sleek navy blazer, matching tailored trousers and low heels, Monica embodied professionalism and power. Her dark skin gleamed under the bright airport lights, and her natural curly hair was neatly styled, framing her face with understated elegance. She was a woman who had mastered the art of walking into a room, or in this case, an airport terminal, and commanding attention without uttering a single word. As the CEO of a major corporation, Monica was no stranger to travel. Business trips were part of her routine, a necessary element of running her company. She checked her watch and quickly typed a text to her assistant, confirming the details for an upcoming meeting. The flight ahead was short, a mere pit stop for a series of meetings that would lead to more decisions, more negotiations, and more business to oversee. But for now, she only had to focus on the journey itself. What Monica didn't know, however, was that this flight would quickly turn into something much more than just another business trip. As she approached the first-class boarding gate, little did she realize that the interactions that awaited her on the other side of that gate would soon test her composure in ways she hadn't anticipated. Monica Blackwell, a poised and accomplished CEO, walked confidently through the bustling terminal of Los Angeles International Airport LAX. Her navy blazer, matching trousers, and low heels reflected her professional demeanor, each step purposeful and measured. She was used to the fast-paced environment of travel, having taken countless business trips across the country and around the world. This particular flight, however, was nothing more than a routine business trip, a brief getaway to attend an important meeting. As she approached the first-class gate, Monica's mind was already focused on the agenda for the meeting awaiting her at the other end of the flight. Her phone buzzed in her hand, and she quickly tapped a response to her assistant, confirming the time and location of the meeting. Despite the hustle and bustle of the airport, she was in her element, unfazed by the surrounding chaos. At the boarding podium stood Samantha Green, a flight attendant in her late 30s. She was neat and composed in her airline uniform, but there was something about her smile that struck Monica as forced, a smile too practiced to feel genuine. As Monica approached, Samantha greeted her with exaggerated politeness, though her tone seemed laced with something insincere, almost as though she was putting on a performance rather than extending a warm welcome. "Good afternoon, ma'am," Samantha said sweetly, her eyes briefly scanning Monica before adding, "First-class boarding pass, please." Monica handed over her pass, expecting the usual procedure to follow. But as Samantha glanced at the ticket, her gaze lingered just a little too long before she looked back at Monica, her expression shifting slightly. "Are you sure you're in the right line, ma'am?" Samantha asked, the question hanging in the air with an edge that made Monica pause. The tone wasn't one of curiosity, it was one of doubt. Monica's brow furrowed slightly, her initial surprise quickly turning into a quiet irritation. She had flown first class countless times, and the question felt more like an accusation than a simple inquiry. Still, she kept her composure. "I'm exactly where I need to be," Monica replied smoothly, offering a polite yet firm nod, as though signaling that the exchange should end here. Samantha didn't immediately let go of the boarding pass, instead scanning it slowly as though looking for something that wasn't there. The machine beeped, confirming the seat, but instead of handing it back, Samantha paused. Monica could sense the power shift in the air. This was no longer just a routine ticket check. This was something else. "First class," Samantha muttered under her breath, almost to herself. Her gaze flicked up to Monica's face again, her lips curling into a faint smirk. "Must be nice," she added, her words laced with sarcasm. Monica's stomach tightened, the insult as subtle as it was cutting. She had encountered this kind of behavior before, people who assumed they could make judgments about her based on appearances, without ever taking the time to understand who she was. Still, she didn't react. Instead, she stood tall, maintaining a calm exterior that only seemed to fuel Samantha's desire to push further. The tension between them was palpable, and Monica knew it was only a matter of time before the situation escalated. Around them, passengers shifted in their seats, sensing the growing discomfort but unsure how to intervene. The air in the terminal seemed to thicken as Samantha's actions began to draw unwanted attention. Monica could feel eyes on her as she moved past, but she refused to let the flight attendant's subtle attack take root. She had far too much on her plate to be derailed by someone like Samantha. But as she moved through the gate and stepped onto the jet bridge, Monica couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last she'd hear from Samantha Green. Monica Blackwell settled into her first-class seat, the comfort of the spacious cabin instantly surrounding her. She placed her handbag beside her and adjusted her belongings, readying herself for the short flight. The quiet hum of the aircraft, the soft sound of other passengers settling in, and the gentle clink of seatbelt buckles being fastened created a calm atmosphere. But Monica's moment of peace didn't last long. Just as she adjusted the headrest and picked up her phone to send a final text to her assistant, a voice broke through the calm. "Oh, it's you again," Samantha Green said from the aisle. Monica tensed slightly but didn't show any sign of irritation as she glanced up. Samantha, holding a tray of pre-departure drinks, was standing next to her seat, her smile just a bit too forced, the politeness of her tone feeling more like an act than genuine courtesy. Samantha paused, clearly lingering, her eyes scanning Monica's ticket in her hand before speaking again. "I just wanted to double-check something," she said, as if Monica were a suspicious passenger. "Can I see your boarding pass again?" Monica's brow furrowed for a moment. She had already handed it over at the gate, and this was unnecessary. Still, she kept her voice steady, her gaze calm. "You've already checked it at the gate," she replied, her tone controlled, the smallest edge of annoyance creeping into her voice. Samantha hesitated for a split second, then smiled more widely, though the tension in her shoulders was palpable. "Just a precaution," she said, almost too quickly. "I wouldn't want there to be any confusion later." But even her attempt to cover it up couldn't mask the underlying judgment. "First class," Samantha muttered under her breath, loud enough for Monica to hear. "Must be nice." Monica's stomach tightened, but she didn't react. Her eyes remained focused ahead, and she refused to be drawn into the confrontation. She had encountered people like Samantha before, those who questioned her presence, her worth, based on nothing more than assumptions. But Monica was far from intimidated. The cabin had grown uncomfortably quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced with the palpable tension between the two women. Passengers who had been quietly reading or working now shifted in their seats, looking between Monica and Samantha. Some looked away, Others exchanged glances, sensing that something was happening that didn't quite sit right. Monica remained calm, watching Samantha closely. She wasn't going to engage, wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a response. The situation wasn't worth her time. She would let Samantha dig her own hole. Just then, Richard Thompson, a seasoned lawyer seated in 4C, leaned forward in his seat. He had been quietly observing the interaction and, sensing the subtle but clear disrespect, decided to speak up. "Excuse me," Richard called out, his voice cutting through the tension. The cabin went still. "Can you explain why you're questioning her ticket again when it's already been checked?" Samantha turned, caught off guard by the interruption. Her eyes flicked nervously toward Richard, then to the passengers around her, who were now listening intently. I was just ensuring everything was in order," Samantha said quickly, her words faltering. Her earlier confidence began to slip, her shaky smile betraying her. She could feel all eyes on her now. Richard wasn't letting her off the hook. "I've been flying first class for years, and I've never had my boarding pass checked twice, especially not for no reason," he continued, his tone steady and measured. "Seems odd, don't you think?" Samantha's smile wavered completely as the other passengers took notice, some now nodding in agreement, others clearly uncomfortable with how the situation had unfolded. For the first time, Samantha realized the gravity of her actions. She wasn't just under Monica's scrutiny anymore. She was under the scrutiny of the entire cabin. Monica sat back in her seat, her posture relaxed but her mind sharp. She could feel the weight of the moment. She didn't need to argue or get defensive. Richard had taken care of that for her. She hadn't been the one to escalate the situation, but now everyone was watching and the power had shifted. Monica gave no outward sign that she was enjoying the turn of events. She simply let the situation play out, knowing that Samantha had just made a grave miscalculation. Monica didn't need to say a word more. She had already won. The tension lingered in the cabin, but it was no longer just about Monica's boarding pass. It was about something far deeper, the quiet power that comes with confidence and the subtle ways in which people like Samantha tried to wield control. As Samantha stepped back, clearly rattled, Monica could feel the weight of the eyes on her, but she stayed unfazed. The game had already shifted in her favor. After the brief exchange with Monica, Samantha Green retreated quickly to the galley, her mind racing as she tried to process what had just happened. The weight of her actions hit her all at once. She had let her personal assumptions and biases get the best of her, questioning Monica's presence in first class, as though it was her place to decide who belonged there. Samantha had tried to brush it off as a routine check, but it was clear to her now that she had crossed a line. The uneasy feeling that had settled in her stomach seemed to grow with each passing second. Samantha slammed the tray she had been carrying down on the counter, trying to steady her shaking hands. Her breathing was slightly erratic, and she couldn't shake the image of Monica's composed, unflinching face. Monica hadn't argued or raised her voice, but that was exactly what made her reaction so powerful. She didn't need to. Monica had simply carried herself with a quiet confidence that seemed to speak volumes, and it made Samantha realize just how wrong she had been. As Samantha stood in the galley, still trying to shake the knot in her chest, Lauren, a fellow flight attendant, walked in with a clipboard in hand. Lauren paused when she noticed Samantha's disheveled state, raising an eyebrow in silent question. "What's wrong with you?" Lauren asked, her tone teasing but curious. Samantha shook her head, brushing her hands through her hair in frustration. "I messed up," she muttered, her voice tight with regret. Lauren leaned against the counter, glancing at the manifest in her hands. As she scanned the list, her eyes landed on Monica's name. The expression on her face shifted from casual to shocked, and she looked up at Samantha with wide eyes. "Wait a minute," Lauren said slowly, her voice laced with surprise. "You're talking about Monica Blackwell, right? The CEO of Blackwell Industries." Samantha froze. The name hit her like a freight train. Her stomach dropped and her breath caught in her throat. Monica Blackwell, the woman she had just disrespected so carelessly, was no ordinary passenger. She was a major corporate partner, a VIP client with immense influence over the airline. Samantha had no idea what she had just done. Her mind scrambled to process the realization, panic setting in as the severity of her actions became clear. Monica wasn't just some random businesswoman flying first class. She was an influential figure whose connections could easily make or break someone's career. Samantha had just questioned a corporate partner's place in first class, and she hadn't even realized who she was dealing with until it was far too late. "What have I done?" Samantha whispered, her hands trembling as she looked down at the manifest. She hadn't thought twice when she'd questioned Monica, but now the gravity of the situation hit her all at once. "I can't fix this. It's over." Lauren let out a low whistle, clearly understanding the magnitude of the mistake. "Yeah, you're in some serious trouble now," she said, her tone turning more serious. "She's got enough pull to have you written up or worse." Samantha's chest tightened with dread. She couldn't undo what had already transpired. Her heart raced as she thought about the possible consequences of her actions. Monica was probably already well aware of what had happened, and given her stature, she had no doubt that she had the power to escalate the situation if she so desired. Samantha's career could very well be on the line. Meanwhile, Monica remained calm and composed in her seat, seemingly unaffected by the incident. She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't argued, she hadn't even reacted in a way that would draw attention to herself. Her quiet confidence was a stark contrast to Samantha's growing panic. Monica knew exactly what she was doing. She didn't need to make a scene. The power was in the control she maintained without ever needing to raise her voice. Monica wasn't just a passenger. She was someone with influence, and she was letting the situation unfold at her own pace without lifting a finger. Samantha realized, too late, that the true power lay not in reacting, but in letting things play out naturally, allowing others to dig their own holes. Samantha could feel the weight of her mistake bearing down on her. She had no way of knowing what Monica would do next, but she now understood just how wrong she had been to push her. Monica had already won without ever needing to speak. As the plane continued its descent into Los Angeles, Samantha Green sat rigidly in the galley, her mind racing. The unease in her stomach had only grown as the minutes passed, each second closer to landing a reminder of the mess she had made. She couldn't shake the feeling of dread gnawing at her from the inside. She had thought she could brush off her behavior, that the incident with Monica Blackwell would be forgotten as soon as the flight ended. But as the plane neared the airport, reality began to settle in. This wasn't going away. Monica hadn't reacted. She had stayed composed throughout the entire encounter, never raising her voice, never demanding an apology. It was that quiet confidence, that calm composure, that had exposed Samantha's actions for what they were: unprofessional, discriminatory, and based on assumptions. As the plane touched down, Samantha knew she was about to face the consequences. The usual rush to gather belongings and prepare for landing was disrupted by a figure in a crisp uniform entering the cabin, an airline representative. His expression was unreadable as he walked straight toward Samantha. She felt her heart skip a beat. "Samantha Green," the representative asked in a voice that rang clear through the cabin. "We need you to step aside and meet with our higher-ups once the plane has landed. You're being investigated." The words hit Samantha like a cold wave. She blinked in disbelief. An investigation? This wasn't just a warning, it was a serious matter. Her mind scrambled to find a way out of this situation, but there was no escape. Her hands trembled as she tried to process the reality of the situation. She had messed up. She had disrespected someone far more powerful than she realized. Monica, sitting just a few rows ahead, hadn't reacted to the announcement. She sat calmly, tapping away on her phone as though nothing had happened. Her silence was deafening. She had already proven her point. As the representative waited for Samantha to follow him, Richard Thompson, the lawyer who had intervened earlier, stood up from his seat. He walked toward the front of the cabin and approached the representative, his tone unwavering. "I can confirm that Monica Blackwell's boarding pass was already checked at the gate," Richard said, his voice carrying across the cabin. "There was no reason for a second check. What happened here was unnecessary and unprofessional." Samantha's face flushed with humiliation. She had tried to get away with her actions, but now, with Richard's statement, it was clear that she was in the wrong. The entire cabin was silent, the tension palpable as the other passengers realized what had occurred. They had all seen the exchange, and now it was being confirmed in front of everyone. The reality of the situation hit Samantha harder than anything else. The representative nodded, taking note of Richard's testimony. "We'll need to take your statement as well," he said to Samantha, his tone no longer kind. The weight of his words made her stomach churn. Samantha could feel the eyes of everyone in the cabin on her, the judgment heavy. Monica remained completely unfazed, a picture of quiet power as she continued to scroll on her phone. Samantha knew, at that moment, that she had no way out. Monica had already won without ever raising her voice. Upon landing, the finality of Samantha's actions was sealed. She was escorted off the plane by airport security, the heavy weight of the situation pressing down on her shoulders. Her hands shook as she walked down the aisle, passing by the other passengers who watched in silence. They had seen everything: the confrontation, the investigation, the undeniable evidence of her mistake. Samantha was led to a separate room as a formal reprimand was issued. She was immediately placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation by the airline. The severity of the consequences began to sink in. She knew her career was in jeopardy, and no matter what explanations she tried to offer, the damage had already been done. Monica Blackwell had never raised her voice, never demanded anything. It was her quiet composure that had exposed the situation and left Samantha with no room to maneuver. Monica, on the other hand, remained calm throughout the ordeal, her dignity intact. As the rest of the passengers disembarked, she took her time, unhurried. There was no sense of triumph or gloating on her part. She had nothing to prove. Her actions had spoken louder than any words ever could. She had made it clear from the beginning that her power lay not in confrontation, but in her ability to stay poised, to remain in control. The airline had taken the complaint to the highest level, and by the time Samantha had been escorted off the plane, Monica had already won. Monica exited the plane last, knowing that the situation had been handled with quiet justice. She walked away, leaving the chaos behind her, her confidence unshaken. Samantha's fate had been sealed, and Monica had ensured that no one would question her place in the world again. This story serves as a powerful reminder that true power doesn't always come from loud confrontations or outward displays of strength. Sometimes, the greatest power comes from knowing when to speak up and when to let the situation unfold. Monica Blackwell's quiet confidence and composure in the face of disrespect showcase the strength that comes from being in control without needing to raise one's voice. Her calmness was her greatest weapon, a subtle yet undeniable force that forced others to recognize her authority. Respect plays a central role in this story. Samantha thought she could get away with subtle acts of discrimination, believing that she could use her position to belittle Monica without consequence. But Monica's quiet yet strategic response highlighted how prejudice and disrespect can backfire. Samantha's attempt to put Monica in her place ultimately led to her own downfall, proving that actions rooted in bias will be exposed in the end. Lastly, this story emphasizes the importance of integrity and accountability. Disrespecting others based on assumptions about their background or appearance can lead to severe consequences. Samantha's actions were a direct result of her disregard for Monica's worth, and they ultimately cost her more than just a career. Her integrity was called into question. The lesson here is clear. Honor and accountability must guide every interaction, no matter who you are.